You're listening to episode 38 with Jim Markus. I wanted you to know that this is the last Story Power for the year 2021. See you in 2022. Enjoy. Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we're passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast during the summer of 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my friends, family, and social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. My goal was to do the same for my listeners, but as I chatted with my guests throughout the first year, I discovered that their personal stories were the most fascinating thing about each episode. Neil Gaiman says, "Fairy tales are more than true not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." I now know that sharing our experiences with others helps us defeat our own dragons. It is our stories that connect us to one another. Let's see what wisdom today's guest has to share with us. Jim Markus is my guest. And Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have so many great guests that I've interviewed from Podmatch. You're one of them. And so unfortunately, your episode's not going to air until early December, but
I get it.
You since you're a podcaster, you understand that whole thing. So you are a podcaster, you also are a writer and a game developer, and I want to hear about all of that. So where would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about all of it. I work as an editor at Brad's Deals. So I find deals all day, every day. And I host the podcast Frugal Living.
Right.
And I also have, if such a society existed, I may have contributed to the start of the Ink and Blood Dueling Society, a secret society of writers. But of course, that would be a secret, and I would not be able to talk about it on a podcast. And you certainly couldn't find more information about that at writingduels.com or on the book. The Ink and Blood Dueling Society doesn't exist. And I developed a storytelling game, which I figured any of these topics, I would be happy to chat with you. I think they're all within your wheelhouse.
Oh, yes. Well, the storytelling game, that sounds fun. But I mean, I was looking at your website and I was like, Brad's Deals. Your name isn't Brad, so
that's true.
We've got
a team of people, like a team of like real people just like me who shop around the internet every day, all day, in the name of Brad. And we find deals, we post them there, and you can go and see what we found today. Like today, I found like an 8-piece comforter set for $30 at Macy's.
Wow. I may have to check out that site.
It's worth it.
Yes, really. That's cool. So do you have lots of traffic on that site?
Yeah. Brad's Deals is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So it's been around for a long time. And I don't know, like I don't see it going anywhere. I like what we do. And it seems like the response is pretty positive. That's cool. Yeah. Well, because the way things are, people need to save money. So it's true.
That's always a plus. Saving money. That's always a plus.
Totally agreed. I'm a frugal person. Like I don't like to spend more than I have to, but I like things. I like to get a good deal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, really. It always makes you feel good. It's sort of like that little adrenaline rush.
I don't know about you, but like that, I feel like everyone who's got a good deal has a story. Like what's the best deal you've ever gotten? Do you have that story like ready? Do you know in your head?
Okay, this might not sound like a really good deal, but we sold our house in 1995 and took a trip around the world in 1996 on some of the proceeds. And then we moved to Arizona. So we lived in Portland, and it was right at the housing. We bought that house for like $39,000, and we sold it for 89 or 90,000, something like that. It was a 1949 house. It had been built in 1949. And so we did some remodeling to it before we sold it, converted the one car garage to a home office. And so that helped, I think. But it was right when the housing boom was starting. And so we were able to move to Arizona without jobs and live for quite a while until we found jobs and took that trip around the world. I mean, I guess that's sort of a deal.
That's an incredible story for a deal. Like the idea that you sold a house, like it had great value to you, but you added value to it, and you got such a good deal. You could travel the world and then move without having a job in the place you're going. That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, right. So that's my deal. What's yours?
Most recently, I was looking for, we bought a house not too long ago, last year, and we have like a big dining room for the first time. Like maybe not big in comparison to other people's dining rooms, but for us, it's huge. And so we wanted to get a table that was appropriate for the size of the room. And, I shop for stuff all the time. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of resigned myself to spending like $1,500 or $1,600 for like a, 8-seat dining room set. And then I went to an estate sale, and they had one priced. It was it's solid wood, 8 chairs, and it extends. And they wanted $500 for it. I know, right? Like, wow. Incredible. But we went on Sunday, and so it was half price. Or I'm sorry, they wanted $600. And so we went on Sunday, and they were just like, you know what? Just take half off. I didn't even have to negotiate for that.
Oh, wow.
But I did anyway. And I got another $50 off that. I had it delivered to my house for an extra like $90. We ended up spending like $380 total, including having it delivered by professionals to our house.
Wow, that is so great. And was it in
I was so proud.
Was it in the style that you wanted?
Yeah, like it looks like kind of like an Amish built table. Like it's really nice, solid wood. Really cool.
Yeah, I like those. Well, I call it mission style out here. I live in the West. So
sure. Yeah.
But that's my favorite style. Yeah, with those clean lines and oh my goodness, solid wood. That's great. Yeah,
I'm really proud of it.
That's cool. So where do you live?
I live just outside of Chicago in a suburb called Highland Park.
Yes. I think I've been there. Actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I've only been to Chicago once, but I had a college friend who lived in the Chicago area, and it might have been Highland Park. That sounds familiar. But anyway, that's cool.
What were you doing in Chicago? What brought you to the city?
It was like a holiday. I was going to her house for the holiday or something. Yeah. Very cool. We were in college, when I was in college, that was a long time ago, in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. I haven't been there in such a long time. It's probably a lot different than when I was there.
It's totally fair. Yeah, I've been here for like 10 years, and I feel like the city's changed enormously in just that time.
Yes. Well, and that's kind of the way it is. I mean, we've lived in southern Arizona for 25 years in the Sierra Vista area, which has Fort Huachuca, and it's changed so much. It's just changed so much in those years that we've lived here.
Arizona's beautiful. I've been only once, and I was near Scottsdale, just for like a work conference, but it was gorgeous. I mean, completely different weather than the Chicago area, but that's exactly what I wanted in mid-February.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful there in February. You don't want to go in July or June because it's really, really hot there.
Sure.
But yeah, we live in the mountains. Where I live, it's in the mountains. So it's cooler than Tucson and Phoenix.
Nice.
But yes, the other day I was driving home from teaching my class and I was listening to NPR and it said, it's 102 in Tucson. And I was like, oh, God. And that was just last week. So
wow.
We're not that hot. Although, I have a student who moved here from Alaska and she said, it's so hot outside. And I was about to say, well, it's only 85, but she's not used to that. So.
Sure.
Anyway, oh, great. So you have a lot of other endeavors, not just your podcast.
Yeah. My most recent thing is I've been working on a game for the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how familiar you are with like role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff.
I'm a little old for that.
Totally fair.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but not much. Yeah.
Well, I got kind of roped into a group in high school and they were like, hey, we're going to play Dungeons and Dragons. I was like, I have no idea what this is, but they taught me and I liked it. It was a fun experience, but it was very rules heavy. You have rules and numbers for everything. And it's a great way to experience kind of that fantasy world and you can tell stories together as a group. But really you have one person who's in charge of the whole story and they're kind of guiding your characters through it. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't play a lot of it for another few years. Eventually I fell into a crowd of people who play much more loose games like that. So they're role-playing games or storytelling games, tabletop role-playing games. And one of them was called Dread. Do you know the game Jenga? Do you know the tower?
Yes.
So someone designed a game where you're basically telling a horror story. And anytime your character wants to do something, they have to pull one of those blocks out of the Jenga tower. And if the tower falls, your character is incapacitated for the rest of the story. You're dead or you're just incapable of continuing. And so it builds the sense of dread as you play. It's an incredible game, but it's a storytelling game. And I was like, oh, I really like this. I like being part of the story and I like that we can tell it together.
Right.
So I found other games like it, games like Fall of Magic, where there's no game master. There's no person telling the story for you. You're all telling the story together. And I took some of those principles and I introduced my own experiences with, storytelling, tarot cards, to make Fortunes, the tarot card storytelling game. And that came out this year.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So do you know a lot about the tarot or is that just part of the storytelling?
Both. I have an interest in tarot, but really I like the idea of there's this device. Right. And this device is tarot cards for this game. Yes. And it gives us prompts and art. And we use those prompts and art to tell our stories. So we're telling a collaborative story, but no one's in charge of it. It's everyone's story.
Oh, I'm in theater, so I love that whole collaborative aspect of it. Yeah, it sounded like you were involved in some sort of a theater group as well.
I have done some work with theater. Yeah, I was part of an improv group, and I've written for a very small theater in Chicago. One that, it was so small. It's like at people's houses. It's that small.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, when I was living in Portland and I was still involved in theater, sometimes we performed in church basements.
Awesome. Yep. I know that feeling. Yeah.
I was also involved with the musical company, which was subsidized by the city. And it was in a fairly large theater in an old high school that they built a new high school and that building was available. And, but also, smaller theaters, lots of small theaters. And at the college, when I directed Measure for Measure, we did it on the library steps outside in April because it was warm enough.
Oh, wow.
Because the campus, the main campus that I teach at doesn't have a theater. So my colleague did 12th night, the next December, I think it was, after that. And we used there's this large pass-through in the library from one part of the campus to another part of the campus. And he used that in December for the...
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It's called the Library Commons.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that idea of using that space. It's already there. It's already for the community. And if you're putting the show on for the community, I love the idea of making use of that space. Did you kind of direct it and stage it for that area or Like, did you make use of the area in a unique way?
In both of them, yes, we did use the stairs. Occasionally, characters would stand on them, and entrances and exits came from the library commons. And the reason we did it it was April, so we started it at 5:30, which was right after the sun went down on the other side of the library. So we still had light, lots of light, and we still had time before the sunset, but we didn't have the hot sun shining on the audience or anything like that. And Dave made his set like a thrust stage. So in the library commons, there's this carpeted area with tables and chairs for students to sit and just chat. And I think there are also like places where they can plug in to charge their phones and their laptops and their iPads and things like that. And so we use that as our backstage area. And then the walkthrough was where the thrust stage was. So the entrances and exits came from the carpeted area to the tiled area. Yeah, that was fun. And we had a lot of people come to that, and we just had donations, and we made like $200 and something.
That's awesome.
Which we were going to start a club, and then the pandemic hit. And so now we're starting our club again, and we already have $213 in our coffers.
That's great. That's really
fantastic. Cool. Yeah. I love that. In people's houses. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we did one like that group was kind of the birthplace of a bunch of other groups. So I met so many local actors and writers and artists there that we ended up splitting off and doing a bunch of other projects together outside of, it's called BYOT, Bring Your Own Theater. And I think BYOT production still exists in Chicago. I'm just not affiliated with it anymore. But they're great. Like their premise was always, we'll give you 24 hours and a stage and an idea. And you have 24 hours to write it, direct it, act it, and then perform it at the end of that day.
Yes. I've heard of that. And they actually, someplace here in Arizona, not too far from us, has done that kind of thing. And someone suggested that our club do that. Maybe we will at some point.
It's worth a try. They do it every month with a different cast and a different production. And when I was doing it, a different location every time. It was an incredible amount of work, but it was so much fun to produce.
Oh, yes. But oh my goodness, every month?
Yeah. Yep. Every month.
Wow. They're ambitious.
I think you might enjoy this. That one of the most unique projects that came out of that was some of the people involved there ended up doing a thing they called the truck theater, where they rented a kind of like a budget pickup truck, or I guess more like a moving van, and they built a little stage in the back of it, and then taped up credits on the back door, and we had 4 actors, and like that was it. So we rolled it to different alleys and different parks and performed out of the back of this truck. And it was incredible. We did no exit, which was, I think, perfect because it's kind of this one room play inside of a truck.
Oh my goodness. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, really good people. Fun to see what people do with restrictions like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, the main campus of Cochise College is actually in Douglas, and they do have a little theater. It doesn't have a really great backstage area, and there's no storage, but at least it's kind of got an orchestra type acting area with the seats curved around it, sort of like the Greek theater, And so, and that's really nice and large. That part's large. So we're hoping with our club to do some things in that little theater. That's about it's 45 minutes away from my house, but it's an hour away from the other campus. And so at some point we're hoping because Dave is a theater professional. So he would really like it if we could get enough interest in theater so that they would build a theater on the Sierra Vista campus, which is now the main campus because it has the most students. He knows how to write grant for grant money.
That is a wonderful trait to have in theater, in the theater world.
Oh my gosh, yes, you need that because it's so expensive to so expensive to produce a play. But so you're also a writer. What do you write?
I have wanted to be a writer forever. And for me, that was the dream. That was what you're talking about. I just want to work on whatever I want to work on. I want to write plays. I want to write books. I want to just write. So I worked in sales for a long time, and I saved up a bunch of money, and I left the sales world and decided I want to start like a little publishing business. So I, learned about book publishing, and I released a book that was more of like a workbook for, there's a literacy center, like a tutoring center in Chicago. That's part of like a nationwide chain of centers. I love it. It's part of 826. So 826 Chicago. And back when I was involved with it, they were called the Boring Store. I think they're called the Secret Agent Supply Company now. And the idea is every big city that has one calls it something kind of cool like that. So the kids who go there get to go to, in Chicago, a spy store, and you get to be a spy. But if you go in the back of that spy store, it's a tutoring center, and you can learn how to write better, and you can be involved with like a lot of literacy programs, which is incredible, hugely worth anyone's time. But I made like a book kind of for that audience called Write with Lions, using Aesop's fables as writing prompts. So I rewrote the fables, produced a bunch of writing prompts, hired an artist to do all the art, did the book layout, released it under More Known Books, which is my publishing company. And that kind of launched me into what I wanted to do. Then I started honing my craft and trying to become a better writer myself, waking up every day, taking freelance copy jobs, like just cranking out content. And it was hard. I have a college degree.
Yeah.
And I considered myself a fine writer until I started trying to write in a brand's voice. But because I was, my livelihood depended on this, I was writing so much and getting to work with these copy editors who were giving me personal feedback on my writing, within an hour. I got very good very quickly at writing quickly and writing effectively and communicating my points. So then I started using my free time to, meet other writers. And at a coffee shop in Chicago called New Wave, I met a couple of friends, Tom and Carolyn, and we started doing kind of like writing sprints where we take a word and 10 minutes and we just write. I'm guessing you've done something like this in the past.
Yeah.
So we love that idea. And we were like, this would be fun to do as an event in front of people. So we created the Ink and Blood Dueling Society. Again, if that organization existed. The Ink and Blood Dueling Society is just two writers hidden from a crowd. The crowd gives them one word to work with in 10 minutes. And as they write, their writing is projected on a screen in front of everyone, side by side. So you can read along with the stories as they're being written, and you can shout at the writers who you can't see, but they can definitely hear you. And you can give them immediate feedback of like, we love this, or this is terrible. This doesn't pass the Bechdel test, immediate feedback. And at the end of the night, you'd have 4 writers competing in total, and you choose your favorite, and we would unmask the one person who the audience voted the best. So if you wrote terribly, you wouldn't have to worry about people knowing who you were. Right. But if you wrote well, then you'd be celebrated, across like everywhere.
Yes.
And that's Ink and Blood. That's the Ink and Blood Dueling Society. And it grew. It started in a coffee shop and moved to a bar and then moved to a comic book store. And then from the comic book store, now we bring it to conventions, not all the time, but back before the pandemic, we were in Boston and San Antonio, Philadelphia. Wow. We've done this now all over for hundreds of people, and it's an incredible feeling. The secret society of writing duelists, people just kind of coming together to celebrate writing in a weirdly competitive way. And then I wrote a book about it. And the book is called The Ink and Blood Dueling Society Doesn't Exist. And it's, it's just kind of written in that idea of it's a secret society. So don't talk about this amazing thing that's happening on Saturday night that you should definitely come to, but don't tell anyone, but tell people.
Oh, I love it. Well, I did talk to a couple of writers that are my favorite. They write fantasy, and yes, and their books are so great. Two women, and they met at this like vanity publishing thing, which they've eventually left. But they do that kind of thing. They'll one lives in New Jersey and one lives in Kansas, but they'll get on the phone and they'll have like half an hour writing sessions with each other. And they'll monitor, are you on Facebook? Get off of Facebook. You're supposed to be writing. So I said, I need a partner like that because I'm sort of stalled right now on my second novel.
Oh, sure.
And the two women who helped me with the first one both died. So I don't have anyone.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
It was very, I know, it's really sad because they were both so creative and such great writers. And, now we don't have them anymore. One of them had a great pirate book that I wanted to read the sequel to. I'm not into pirates, but but she never finished it because she was quite ill. So, so I'll have to find a writer partner to do something like that. I'm not sure I would. My brain doesn't work that fast. I was talking to one of my guests, or maybe more than one. My husband and I used to watch Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, and they would show the writer's room and how frantic things were, because it was based on like a Saturday Night Live kind of show. And I said to Barry one time, Barry's my husband, I don't think I could write that fast. I really don't think I could. But my friend Dave said, well, they throw ideas out and then that spurs somebody else's ideas. And so maybe you could, but I thought, well, I don't know. I'm kind of a muller. I let things ruminate.
I'm of the opinion there's no one correct way. Like what works for you doesn't need to work for everyone, and vice versa.
That's right.
Like I tended to think of writing as this very solo activity. Like I'm more of an introvert. I like to just be alone. I want to be at my, at my pad of paper or at my computer, and I want to write. But the more involved with the community of writers that I've found, the more I realized the community for me is a very inspirational thing. Like I'll write a lot more effectively, knowing very specifically, I'm writing this for my friends, these people. I'm writing it for them. I know they're going to read it when it's in that beta version before I, make my edits, before I get it to the final draft.
Yes. Well, I might hone in on Audra and Stacy, except that I don't write fantasy. So
sure.
Mine is more magical realism. So
ooh, fun.
I have to find somebody who writes that, because one timeline's historical and one's in the present. So, and they're linked. So I need to find someone. But I have to say, I haven't worked very hard on it now because I'm so busy with the podcast, and I absolutely love every aspect of podcasting. I can't say I love every aspect of writing, but I love or even teaching. Sometimes teaching is, I've been doing it since I was 18 in one capacity or another as a teacher's aide or, teacher. And so, I'm kind of getting to the place where I just want to switch gears now.
So. I get that. I think that's a natural part of, evolving as a person.
Yes. But it is helpful to have writers who understand your writing and can give you feedback in such a way that it doesn't hurt your ego. It's just, think about this. And then that gives you an idea for something else, which is what my friends did. They, this is going in a really good direction, or this part's a little boring. Cut it out and move immediately to the next section. Oh, okay. Yeah. And then they would give me ideas or they would ask me questions that would make me think about how to solve this little problem or that little issue or whatever. So yeah, I miss them.
I get that. Yeah. I mean, it's such a wonderful personal thing, that connection between writers during that stage of writing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, during the development. And that's what Stacy and Audra do for each other is they'll read, the drafts as they are developing. And then they both have Facebook pages where they will ask for people to read, okay, this is the end of the first draft. Read and make suggestions. And then, or this is the end of the second or third or whatever draft before they publish. So
very cool.
Yeah. So you do your own layout. Who does your artwork?
So I did my own layout for the first book, and I hired a friend of mine to do the artwork for the first book. Mm-hmm. For the second book, I worked with Charles Huth. He's a guy I've met from the North Side Comic Artists group in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And he's got a really wonderful liney style. Like, it's very, very geometric. It appeals. So I asked him to do the art for the second book, and he also did the layout for the second book.
Oh, good.
And he also, after I was so impressed with how it turned out, that we worked together on Fortunes as well. So I developed the game. He did all the art for the book, and he did the layout for the book as well. Uh-huh. So now he's just kind of a good collaborator on this type of stuff.
Oh, that's great. Yes. I'm very fortunate. My husband's an artist, a graphic artist. And so he laid out my book and did the cover. And
oh, that's great.
He's the one that did the artwork for my podcast, and he's helped me revamp my website. Yeah, I don't have to pay him.
Even better.
Yeah. I mean, he just does it out of love. Isn't that nice? So he wants to retire soon. And then I said to him, well, should I get someone to help me with all of that stuff? Oh, no, I want to help you. So, so he has his own projects too, of course, but
sure. Yeah. What does he work on?
Well, he helps people with their Mac problems. That's one thing. He's been using a Macintosh since 85 or 85, I think. And so I called myself a computer widow because he read all the magazines and all the books. And now he listens to a lot of different podcasts about, Mac. And he has, how many computers have we had since then,
Sure.
That he worked on himself. And so he's kind of the family tech guy. But he also loves to do pottery. That's his favorite artwork. Although he is very good at drawing and so on and so forth. So he has a lot of different projects in mind. At some point, he wants to have a studio here where he can play in the clay.
Very cool.
Because he hasn't been able to do that for a while. So he wants to get back into the pottery thing. But he also creates like little backgrounds for your phone. What do you call it?
Like wallpapers for the lock screen. Sure.
Right. And he creates those. Nice. And at one point he had a line of greeting cards that he did. So, he just likes to keep his creative juices flowing in lots of different ways.
It sounds like you're both very creative people.
Yes, thank heaven. Because it would be terrible if I was married to an accountant. Oh, I would not understand that at all.
Get that. Yep.
Although there are parts of Barry that are sort of like that, but not completely. So thank heaven. Wow. So do you have any other things you would like to share with the listeners?
I mean, we've covered all the things that I was really excited to talk to you about. Like I wanted to chat with you about, competitive writing and the idea of telling stories and that kind of space. And I wanted to talk to you about storytelling games, but I think we've talked about that. Mm-hmm. And those are kind of the top of my list.
Oh, great. Well, I'll have to check out that. This is a side thing, but I'll have to check out Brad's deals.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's wonderful. They also, obviously, they're sponsors of the Frugal Living podcast. So Frugal Living is a joy. Like, I've worked on it a bunch. I know this episode won't be out until December, but we're recording it in September, and Frugal Living has a new season coming out starting Tuesday. So I've been just chugging along, really trying to, get all these episodes edited, mastered, and then uploaded. So
yes. Oh, you do all your own work too. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now it is a busy project.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And we bought a new computer, and for some reason I have to, whenever I want to upload the audio portion, I'm having difficulty on the laptop. So I have to do it on my desktop.
Oh, annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. So Barry said, I have to figure out why that's not, he loves those kinds of little,
Sure.
I have to figure out why that's not working. So he'll go do the research and go to the chats and find out why it's not working. So eventually it will work, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I commiserate with you, and I also applaud you, because I know that in a way, I find that whole thing fun. I love listening to the episode over and over again and editing it and then preparing it with the music. And yeah, so
it's very zen. Like, you really, for me, it's a very unique process. Outside of anything else I do, we get to have these creative conversations, right? I get to actively listen, but then when I'm editing, I am zoned in. I am just, laser focused on what I'm doing. And it's, it's a good way to not focus on anything else for a good 4 hours.
Yeah. I find it relaxing.
Yeah, same.
It's kind of weird. Yeah. I have a student who's a movie independent filmmaker here in Sierra Vista. And he was saying, yeah, the editing process, some independent filmmakers don't finish it because you've got to go over the film and over it and cut this and cut that. And he said, I'm just so proud that I finished and I got it up on YouTube. So yeah, I understand that. I understand that whole feeling of, oh, wow. I got it accomplished.
Breath of fresh air after that. Very moment of pride, and now terror as things release. And then I will have joy again once the season is fully out there to the world.
Right. Yeah. And you do yours every week, right?
Yeah, during the seasons. So we try to do 2 seasons a year, and each season's between 7 and 9 episodes usually. But, if eventually we can get a little bit of help, maybe I can get an editing partner or an intern to work with us. Hopefully we'll be able to go to weekly throughout the year, but we're still a ways from that.
Yeah, that's why I don't have seasons really, although I did decide that I am not going to do a one on the 22nd of December because it's close to Christmas. And so this year, so I won't start it again until January, but every other week is about all I can manage with the teaching and all the other stuff that's
reasonable. And if you're doing it alone, it's admirable. Once every other week is a lot, but it sounds like it's also sustainable. That once a week would be too much. It's so much work.
It is. But it's enjoyable work. So as long as I'm doing what I love, I guess that's the point.
Yeah.
Doing what you love. And I remember when I was growing up, my mom and dad worked at jobs just to bring food to the table and have a roof over our heads. It wasn't that they didn't love their jobs, but there were lots of things about them that they didn't like. And I'm so fortunate to have been able to do pretty much what I love my whole entire life. Almost my whole entire life. Yeah.
Well, and that's who you want teaching you too. You want the teacher who enjoys teaching. You want the writer who enjoys writing. You want the podcaster who enjoys podcasting.
Well, I may have to email you and get the names of all these things for the show notes. I did jot down notes, but yes, because the Ink and Blood Dueling Society, you'll have to tell me closer to the air date where you might be doing it if you're doing it face to face again.
Absolutely. if it existed, if such a society existed,
That's right.
you'd be able to find information at writingduels.com.
Oh, writingduels.com.
Okay. And that will always be updated with wherever we're doing it, whether it's online on Twitch or in person at a convention, or in the back of a independent bookstore somewhere like Open Books in Chicago. But I couldn't possibly say.
Yeah, well, because it's a secret society.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. Well, because I might have listeners in your area or in the area where you're having a duel, and they might want to go.
I would invite anyone, if such an event ever did happen. I would love to see a lot of new faces there.
Really?
Or to see no new faces because you're all wearing masks.
Oh, that's
not saying
true.
You have to, but we do. So,
well, by December, who knows what will happen by December?
Oh, I totally forgot. Yeah, we're in the pandemic, so when I say masks, everyone thinks of like the face masks for protection. We did this long ago, and we continue doing it not during the pandemic, but we wore leather masks for like the Renaissance Festival, over like the top halves of our faces, like masquerade masks.
Yes.
The fun kind of masks.
The fun kind of masks. Oh, yes, that's true. Yes. Or like Commedia dell'arte masks.
Yes. And I think there will be a wonderful middle ground of maybe there can be a fun mask that will also protect us as we're out.
Yes, that's true. Yes. Well, of course, the writers are masked, so nobody knows who they are.
Absolutely. Always.
That's right. That's so great. I love that. I would be afraid to be in that group, though, because I'm a terrible writer when I have to write fast.
I can tell you, I'm part of this group. I would be part of this group. And I'm always terrified every time before a match begins, whether I'm writing in it or just hosting the event. It is a wonderful, terrifying experience. You're behind the scenes.
Wonderful. Terrifying. That's right. Well, and have you ever won?
I've won very infrequently. I can tell you like names. Again, if these existed, I could tell you names of people who did win often, and they're just the greatest writers I've come across. I hesitate to mention their names because, again, this is a secret society. But if you come, we will announce the winner for you. So you will leave with a new favorite writer. It'll be great.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh, Jim, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for being my guest. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, just thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. And it was an incredible conversation.
Oh, good. Good. So I'm happy for you about your deal of your new dining room set.
I know. And if you want deals, bradsdeals.com.
bradsdeals.com. Yes. Yes, listeners. Even though we're not getting paid for sponsoring them, I'm giving Podmatch and them a little shout out.
Thanks, everyone. Yes. You can also edit that out if you'd like, but I love it.
Oh, no. I'll keep that in. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles, at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.